You are currently living as an annual plant. In a world that requires the resilience of an ancient oak, you perceive time through the flickering, high-frequency lens of the individual, a biological unit with a shelf life of perhaps 8 decades. This is the temporal trap of the prey. In the unyielding cycles of the persistence hunt, the individual is merely a temporary vessel, an ephemeral carrier for a much more profound and lethal reality, the genetic ledger. Most of you are burning your life force to satisfy the immediate dopamine-driven whims of the self, failing to realize that the self is a biological hallucination designed to ensure the survival of the lineage. By focusing on your own comfort, your own success, and your own fleeting experiences, you are performing an act of genomic sabotage. You are consuming the seed corn of your ancestors and leaving nothing but dust for your descendants. We are now bisecting the biology of dynasty building, showing you how to expand your temporal horizon from years to centuries, and why your current short-term preference is the primary reason your name will be erased from the earth within 2 generations. Let us analyze the pathology of the atomic individual. The modern social machine has engineered a biological divorce between you and your lineage. It has convinced you that freedom is the ability to exist in isolation, unburdened by the weight of the past or the responsibility of the future. This is a predatory reframing. In nature, an organism without a dynastic orientation is a biological dead end. Consider the difference between the ephemeral organism, the insects that bloom and die in a single season, and the apex strategist, the species that invest decades in the hardening of their offspring and the securing of their territory. The sovereign man does not work for himself. He works for the continuity of the bloodline. He understands that his primary function is to act as a biological bridge, a conduit for resources, intel, and power to flow from the past into an indefinite future. If you are only hunting for your own stomach, you are a scavenger, not a king. You are building a sandcastle in the face of a rising tide, and your lack of a generational anchor is the reason you feel so fundamentally insignificant. The masses are currently temporal refugees. They have no history they value and no future they can influence. They are trapped in the eternal now, a state of high-entropy consumption where they trade their ancestral inheritance for digital trinkets and transient status. They are the last of their line, even if they have children, because they have failed to transmit the epigenetic code of dominance. They raise their offspring to be standardized components for the matrix, ensuring that the wealth and wisdom of the family are liquidated and absorbed by the giants of the state and the corporation. This is the entropy of the modern family. To move toward dynasty, you must first priznaj čtoti zavias, admit that your current individualistic success is a failure of biological scale. You must admit that you are building a monument to a ghost, and that without a dynastic infrastructure, your life's work is merely a gift to the parasites who will inherit the ruins of your world. Consider the biology of the fortress. A dynasty is not just a collection of people. It is a multi-generational organism. It is a system designed to accumulate and protect life force, capital, territory, and knowledge across the barriers of time. In the wild, the dominant pack, or the imperial pride, does not start from zero with every new birth. They inherit the hunting grounds, the social hierarchy, and the collective wisdom of the elders. This is strategic accumulation. The nice guy, however, is taught that everyone should start equal. This is a lethal lie designed to ensure that no single bloodline ever becomes strong enough to challenge the masters of the matrix. The sovereign man rejects equality in favor of accumulation. He seeks to provide his descendants with a biological head start, so profound that they can operate on a level of reality that the unevolved cannot even perceive. He is building an unfair advantage that will last for 300 years. The first movement of the dynasty strategy is the clinical audit of the bloodline. You must look at your resources, your money, your land, and your intel, and ask, how much of this will survive 100 years of entropy? If the answer is none, you are not building a dynasty. You are just having a very expensive party for yourself. You must begin to convert soft assets, like your salary or your fleeting fame, into hard dynastic sinew. This means acquiring territory that cannot be taxed out of existence, building private networks of trust that are immune to social decay, and developing a family culture that is more powerful than the state's indoctrination. You are creating a time-hardened vessel for your life force. This is the sovereignty of the long game. It is the realization that your true power is not measured by what you have today, but by what your great-grandchildren will still possess because of the cold, calculated decisions you are making right now. The modern economic landscape is a metabolic sink, a system designed with surgical precision to ensure that the individual remains a transient biological battery, never accumulating enough surplus energy to trigger a phase shift into dynastic sovereignty. You are currently operating under the linear extraction model, where your life force is converted into currency that is immediately liquidated by the friction of existence, taxes, inflation, and the manufactured desires of the consumer matrix. To the apex predator, wealth is not a means of consumption. It is frozen energy intended for the fortification of the bloodline. We are now bisecting the architecture of accumulation, showing you how to move from soft income to hard generational sinew, and why your refusal to master the digital frontier is the primary leak in your family's future fortress. You are currently building a sandcastle on a shoreline where the tide is controlled by your enemies. Let us analyze the pathology of the three-generation curse. There is a recurring biological and social phenomenon where the first generation builds the foundation, the second generation stabilizes the structure, and the third generation, insulated from the friction of the hunt, squanders the inheritance and returns the bloodline to the status of a serf. This is the entropy of the unearned surplus. It occurs because the code of dominance, the internal laws, the clinical discipline, and the predatory radar was not transmitted alongside the capital. To build a dynasty, you must realize that money without a sovereign operating system is merely bait for more advanced predators. You are currently obsessed with the amount of your wealth, while ignoring the hardness of its architecture. For those seeking a clinical route to building these unseizable digital estates, the Protocol 260 provides a strictly described route to constructing automated YouTube AI empires that act as your family's digital endowment. It is a structured roadmap for those ready to move from being a unit of revenue to becoming the owner of the pipeline. The shift from individual wealth to dynastic capital requires the total rejection of metabolic leakage. The masses are high-entropy organisms. The moment they acquire a surplus, they increase their heat, their lifestyle, their visibility, and their dependencies. This is a terminal error. The sovereign dynasty operates in a state of cryogenic preservation. You must keep your internal costs low and your external fortress high. You convert your liquid cash into convex assets, territories, private equity, and digital engines that grow independently of your personal labor. These assets are the organs of your family's body. They must be shielded from the predatory oversight of the state through the use of sovereign structures, trusts, and decentralized networks. If your wealth can be seized by a single legal decree or a single bank failure, you do not own a dynasty. You own a temporary permission to be wealthy. Consider the sovereignty of digital real estate. In 2026, physical land is increasingly locked behind the walls of the old giants, but the digital frontier remains a zone of primal fluidity for the observant. A YouTube AI empire is not just a content channel, it is a generational asset. It is a cash-flowing engine that, if built correctly, can harvest energy from the global market for decades with minimal biological input. This is the perpetual hunt. Unlike a traditional job which dies with you, a digital engine can be inherited, scaled, and weaponized by your descendants. It is the new ancestral land. By failing to claim your piece of this frontier today, you are sentencing your children to be digital serfs, paying rent for their attention to the very corporations that are currently harvesting yours. You must have the coldness to view every hour of your time as a brick in this wall. The environment of 2026 is a great sifting. The linear slaves are being separated from the asymmetric sovereigns. To cross this chasm, you must adopt the sentinel mindset. You are the guard at the gate of your family's future. Your role is to neutralize every threat to the accumulation of life force. This means clinical tax optimization, the aggressive hardening of your digital perimeters, and the relentless pursuit of information asymmetry. You must know what the giants know before they act. You must be the one who understands the physics of the reset and positions his lineage in the fat tails of the new economy. This is not a career choice. It is a biological imperative. If you fail to build the fortress now, while the window of fluidity is still open, your bloodline will be recycled by the very entropy you are currently ignoring. Stand up, stop consuming the harvest, and begin the cold, clinical accumulation of your family's eternal fire. The physical inheritance of capital is merely the transfer of a biological corpse if it is not accompanied by the transmission of the predatory operating system. Most of you are currently operating under the delusion that providing for your children means sheltering them from the very friction that forged you into a functional organism. You believe that by removing the weight of the hunt, you are granting them freedom, but in the cold, unyielding language of biology, you are performing a parental lobotomy. You are raising low-voltage organisms who lack the internal circuitry to manage high-potential environments. A dynasty is not built on trust funds. It It is built on the epigenetics of dominance. It is the deliberate clinical encoding of resilience, strategic skepticism, and sovereign willpower into the very nervous system of the next generation. If you do not provide the software of the apex predator, the environment will provide the software of the standardized serf. You are currently breeding victims, and you are calling it love. Let us analyze the pathology of the insulated air. In the natural world, the offspring of the dominant pack members are not granted status. They are granted exposure. They are forced to witness the kill, to endure the cold, and to navigate the complex social hierarchy of the pride from the moment they can track a scent. This is hormetic education. The nice guy father, however, attempts to create a biological vacuum around his children. He shields them from the physics of reality, convinced that he can protect them from the winter forever. The result is a generation of metabolic fragility. When the founder, the one with the predatory radar, eventually expires, the children are left with a massive influx of energy, capital, and zero capacity to direct it. They are high-entropy targets for every parasite, lawyer, and corporate entity in the landscape. They do not inherit a throne. They inherit a bullseye. You must understand the mechanism of cultural contagion. Within the family unit, the most powerful signal is not what is said, but what is embodied. Your children are not listening to your advice. They are scanning your biological frequency. If you are a compliant serf who obeys the masters of the matrix out of fear, your children will inherit that fear as their primary operating frequency. They will become risk-averse components designed to seek the safety of the herd. To build a dynasty, you must become the living proof of sovereignty. You must exhibit the OODA loop of a hunter in every interaction. You must show them how to audit the environment, how to identify the parasites, and how to harden the perimeter. You are not raising children, you are indoctrinating commanders. Every meal, every conversation, and every crisis is a training module in the Dynastic Warfare Academy. If you are not the primary programmer of their reality, the state-run indoctrination centers, schools, will fill the void with the values of the serf. Consider the biology of strategic hardening. Resilience is not a gift, it is a neurobiological adaptation to friction. A dynasty that survives centuries is one that intentionally introduces synthetic friction into the lives of its members. You do not give your children the feast for free. You force them to perform the hunt. You expose them to the coldness of the market, the complexity of legal structures, and the reality of human betrayal while you are still alive to act as their tactical mentor. You are simulating the winter so that when the real winter arrives, their nervous systems recognize it as a familiar hunting ground. This is the standard of the sovereign lineage. You are building a lineal immune system that can identify and neutralize social and economic pathogens before they can reach the core of the family fortress. Most of you are too weak to do this. You are too addicted to the dopamine of being liked by your children to be the predator they need as a father. You are trading their future sovereignty for a temporary emotional comfort. We must address the sovereignty of the family council. A dynasty is not a democracy. It is a private corporate state. It requires a constitutional framework that governs the behavior of its members, the protection of its assets, and the criteria for leadership. You must move from the accidental family to the structured order. This means establishing the laws of the house, absolute rules regarding debt, marriage, education, and loyalty. You are creating a closed loop of trust in a world of open-air treachery. This structure acts as a biological buffer against the entropy of individual failure. If one member of the lineage falters, the system of the dynasty absorbs the shock and maintains the momentum. The masses have no such structure. They are atomic units, easily divided and conquered by the giants. The sovereign man, however, is a networked entity, supported by the collective life force of his ancestors and the disciplined potential of his descendants. The environment of 2026 is a great filtering event. The disconnected individuals are being ground into the dust by the convergence of AI and systemic resets. Your only path to permanent relevance is the construction of a generational anchor. You must realize that slepo povtorenie chujik scenariev put vinikuda, that raising your children to be good students and polite citizens is a guarantee of their eventual serfdom. You must raise them to be the architects of the new world, the ones who understand the physics of the machine and know how to operate its controls. This requires you to first first perform the extraction of your own mind. You cannot teach sovereignty if you are still a slave. You cannot build a dynasty if you are still obsessed with your own retirement. You must become the eternal founder, the one who sets the signal of dominance that will echo for 300 years. Stand up, stop being a dad, and start being a dynasty architect. Harden the root, code the mind, and secure the future. We have reached the terminal phase of the dynastic hunt, the construction of the sovereign firewall. You must realize that the environment of 2026 and beyond is not merely competitive, it is actively predatory toward the accumulation of independent life force. The giants of the matrix, the central banks, the state-run indoctrination machines, and the algorithmic curators of reality are designed to identify and dissolve any concentrations of power that do not remain subservient to their prime directive. To build a dynasty is to declare a biological war on entropy. You are attempting to preserve a specific signal of dominance through the noise of centuries. This requires more than just capital. It requires the creation of a zero-point anchor, a physical and digital territory that is functionally invisible and legally toxic to the social machine. Most of you are currently building glass houses on a battlefield, focused on the vanity of the structure while ignoring the vulnerability of the foundation. You have survived the acquisition of the surplus. Now you must survive the envy of the matrix. Let us dissect the biology of the dynastic perimeter. In the natural world, the most successful lineages are those that master the art of invisible dominance. Consider the deep root systems of the ancient redwood forests or the subterranean networks of the most resilient predatory colonies. They do not flaunt their strength. They harden the core and expand the root. The sovereign dynasty must operate in the shadows of the distribution. This means moving your generational assets into jurisdictions and structures that are beyond the immediate reach of the Great Reset. You must utilize the tools of 2026, private keys, non-custodial assets, and multi-jurisdictional trusts, not as investment strategies, but as biological shields. If your family's survival is dependent on the stability of a single fiat currency or the permission of a single government, you have no firewall. You are a tenant of the state, and your inheritance is merely a temporary loan that will be recalled during the next systemic crisis. The masses are currently biological open source. Their finances are transparent to the parasites, their locations are tracked by the giants, and their children's minds are open to the influence of the digital savannah. They have no perimeter. They are easy harvest for the entropy of the machine. The sovereign man, however, practices metabolic concealment. He builds a dynasty that is lean. He maintains the appearance of the standard citizen while presiding over an underground empire of influence and resource. He understands that the feast must be kept behind the wall. This is the standard of the fortress. By diversifying the family's presence across the physical and digital world, you are creating a Hydra effect. If one head of the dynasty is attacked, the body continues to hunt. This is the only way to achieve intergenerational time hardening. You are building an organism that is too complex to be categorized and too resilient to be crushed. You must recognize the entropy of the public identity. Every moment you spend seeking public status or social validation is a leak in your generational firewall. True power is silent. It is the gray eminence that operates from the high ground. To build a dynasty, you must train your descendants to value privacy as a weapon. They must understand that in a world of total surveillance, the invisible man is the only one who is truly free. You are currently teaching your children to be content for the matrix, encouraging them to chase the dopamine of the like and the follow. You are feeding your own lineage to the parasites. You must perform a surgical extraction of your family's digital soul. Move your communications to encrypted channels. Move your wealth to sovereign ledgers, and move your legacy into the private archive. This is the reclamation of the sacred. You are turning your family into a private reality that exists within the crumbling shell of the old world. The environment of the future is a zero-sum filter. As resources become scarce and the giants become more aggressive, the only ones who will maintain their sovereignty are those who have built a dynastic buffer. This buffer is composed of information asymmetry, resource redundancy, and lineal loyalty. You must realize that that the individual is too small to survive the coming resets. You need the force multiplier of the bloodline. This is the eternal hunt. You are the first sentinel of a lineage that will see the turn of the next century. You are not saving money. You are securing the flame. You must have the coldness to view every decision through the lens of a 100-year horizon. If it doesn't strengthen the wall, it is a waste of life force. If it doesn't harden the root, it is a distraction. You are the architect of an immortal biological engine. Finally, we must talk about the sovereignty of the eternal founder. Your role is not to be remembered. Your role is to be effective. The most powerful dynasties in human history are those whose founders are whispers in the dark, but whose internal laws still govern the behavior of their descendants. You are currently obsessed with your legacy as a form of vanity. Abandon it. Focus on the functional continuity of the code. Build the systems, secure the assets, and train the commanders. Become the ghost in the machine of your own bloodline. When the history of 2026 is written, the names of the specialists and the consumers will be long forgotten, erased by the friction of time. But the dynasty of the sovereign will still be hunting, still be accumulating, and still be reigning in the silence. Stand up. Stop thinking in months. Start thinking in centuries. Build the wall or watch your fire go out forever.